Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone, from wherever you're joining in the world. Thank you so much for joining us today for the next installment of Cylance vs. Hacking Exposed, Think Beyond. Before we get started, we just have a couple of housekeeping items we need to review. If you could go to the next slide. Audio will sound best streamed through your computer. Please submit any questions you have via the Q&A box. We will do our best to try to answer them throughout, or if there's time at the end. We will post additional resources in the chat box if we have any today. Your feedback is essential, so if we do have time for the polling questions at the end, please take the time to answer them. There's only 2. Links to the recording and this presentation will be sent to you in the next few days, so keep an eye on your email. And if you need any help, you can reach out via the Q&A box or at that email, webinars@cylance.com. And with that, I will pass it off to Stuart and Brian to introduce themselves and take it away.
All right, thanks so much, Liz, appreciate it. Welcome everybody. It looks like we've got a pretty good group today. Quite a few folks on the presentation. So we're gonna go ahead and get this party started. We have about an hour. As usual, we're going to do about 40-45 minutes of demos, and we're going to do about 10, 15, 20 on Q&A. I'll be your Q&A host by and large, or Vanna White by some measure, trying to entertain and keep everything into perspective here as Brian and Evil Bob do their business and show you how the bad guys are getting around all kinds of protection layers like antivirus and EDR. And then of course, we're gonna show you how Cylance fares with each of the attacks that you guys showed last time. Sorry, I couldn't make that last webinar. I was bummed out, but
it's okay, man. We were able to somewhat
I heard you carried on.
I don't know about that, but we stumbled through it.
Carried the flag. So thanks to Evil Bob and Brian for doing all that. All right, so let's just get it rolling. Go ahead and switch to the next slide, Brian. All right, so why think beyond? Go ahead and do it one more time. So we often talk about, gosh, you know, we've been just pummeled to death with ways around the adversary. I mean, when I started writing that book, the Hacking Exposed book in 1996, 97, it was really, I just wrote it because I wanted to document all the techniques that I had learned about how to bypass systems. And pretty much every single page in Hacking Exposed was a fileless attack. They weren't really file-based. I mean, they might have had a file like a script or something like that, but ultimately they weren't malware-based. And so the whole book, I mean, all 300 bloody pages of the thing ever since the first edition has always been about how do we get around the systems and controls that are there to allow just about anything to run that we wanted as a bad guy. And so the traditional method of trying to prevent all these attacks just will not work. We've got to think differently. We've got to think beyond. And so I just challenge everybody to think differently, try and think about how the bad guys really are working. What are the core foundational problems of how those attacks come into play? And then let's try and find a predictive, preventative way of preventing all this stuff rather than just sort of cleaning up the mess faster and trying to detect and respond and get the updates out and the IOCs and the IOAs and blah, blah, blah. Let's just prevent it. We've never seen this attack before, but we're going to be able to prevent it with true prediction. So that's the idea behind Think Beyond.
Yeah, sort of like, you know, the fire marshal saying, hey, we saw something funny and we stopped your house from burning down.
Yeah.
Rather than, oh, hey, by the way, your house is on fire and you've got all these problems happening.
Yeah, it's like saying, well, what if we could prevent your house from ever catching a match?
Right.
Ever. Or having any sort of, you know, wiring problem to spark a flame, et cetera. So at any rate, that's the concept. And that does require some thinking beyond because not many people talk like that. So unfortunately, what we've seen in the industry was because the layers have been totally ineffective, that they've just added more and more and more layers. They've tried to rely on just compliance mandates to sort of eke by and thereby really not getting ahead of the adversary whatsoever. We've always been behind, chasing. And so now with Cylance, obviously, we get that ability now to get ahead, years ahead, in fact, and we've shown that time and time again, year over year. So that's what we want to make sure we empower everybody to think like is you can be predictive and you can prevent, and you can rethink the whole stack that you have, all your layers between endpoint and cloud and network all across the way. So threat prevention, threat-centric prevention that really predicts before you need to detect and respond. And so really almost eliminate the need to detect and respond. That's my goal mission.
That would be an awesome goal.
I'm probably the craziest person alive for saying those kinds of things, but that's how it is. All right. So with that, I'll scoop out a little bit. Go ahead and go to the next slide. All right. So the agenda for today, we talked about it. We already did it last week. I don't think we're going to go through too much detail here. There's a lot of different ways to bypass the both traditional AV, or sometimes I like to call it classic AV. That's sort of my favorite term these days. And then sort of some new emerging endpoint security techniques around EDR, but largely our EDR is just more signatures. They are more just heuristics or rules. They might be complex or generic rules, but they're still rules, which in my book is always really a signature.
Yeah.
Because all you have to do is make just one change or two small little changes, and then you can bypass that whole detection.
Looking for patterns or behavior, not necessarily, intent.
That's right. Exactly.
It's a difficult thing to figure out.
Exactly. So what we're going to do, Brian's going to jump in and he's going to walk through the same scenarios that we did in the session before.
Yep.
But this time we're going to see how Cylance does.
Yep. That is the main goal. We're going to jump in. We're going to go through some of these fairly quickly at the beginning because we want to save time kind of for the all soup to nuts kind of hack at the end. Now, last time we showed in kind of our one more thing, we talked about Trevor C2 and how it's designed to bypass traditional endpoint security and how it hides things in just clear text HTTP transmissions and gets. It's really cool.
And the thing, sorry to interrupt, but the thing to remember before Brian gets going here is, of course, Cylance does a great job with all of these, hoping. But, look, we're not perfect. We've never said we're perfect, but we will, I will give you our promise that we will constantly work for perfection. We will constantly be going after every single little crack in the dam and taking a very machine learning, preventative, predictive approach to this, rarely going back in time and going through the signature-based approach to solve a problem. So that is our promise to anybody out there. All right, so with that,
awesome.
Fire away, big guy.
And today, hopefully the demo gods will be with us. Again, we're dealing with live technology, live malware, and we just
how we like it.
Hope things go. So
right, the razor's edge.
All right. So we're going to switch just a second here. Okay. So let's see here. We need to go through. All right. So here, Stu, you can help me out with this one. But basically, last time we talked a little bit about some of the things you mentioned about maybe the limitations of signatures and things like that, where some of these things are, why is it so easy to bypass? Well, you mentioned one earlier. If you change, some of these signatures are written for patterns or whatever. And so if you simply modify the file by one little bit, all of a sudden the signature doesn't match anymore.
Right. That's the first big problem, is that you can just make tiny modifications in any step or technique to just sort of bypass the rule, the signature. That's for sure. The other problem, the big problem, is that a lot of these tools can be used for good and evil.
Yes.
And it's hard to know who's actually behind the keyboard.
Well, for example, Metasploit, right? We're using Metasploit a lot in these demonstrations because it's a good red team offensive testing tool, right? But what you have is a lot of security vendors write signatures specifically to detect the Metasploit code. Right. So are you testing the security, or are you testing their ability to create a signature to detect Metasploit?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And so These dual use things too, we call them potentially on-one programs or dual use admin tools, things like that. It's hard to know, gosh, is PS exec being run for malicious by a bad guy, or is it being run by a good guy to do good things?
Exactly.
And those are the two big problems that the industry really, really has. So to affect that, A, you got to take a machine learning approach, and B, you got to look at intent and behavior.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's just to set it up.
And so even, you know, when we come back here in a few weeks and we do the next Hacking Exposed, we're actually going to talk a lot about full-on attack emulation in your networks and things like that as well, which kind of go to, you know, we've been basically building these tools over the past few Hacking Exposed. Now kind of in the next series, we're going to put them kind of all together into a full-on mainstream type of attack.
Yeah, I love this stuff. And by the way, if you've got ideas, if you got cool
Absolutely.
ideas, send it in. Send it to me. I'm on Q&A, so you just let me know what cool ideas for the next versions.
Yep.
I want to do, I think, some identity-based stuff maybe next with Mimikatz and blah, blah, blah. I don't know. We're going to talk about it, but send in what you guys want, okay?
Yeah, so Stuart's going to be on Q&A. Also, Evil Bob is going to pop in from time to time, but mainly he's on as well to address any questions that you guys may have. So let's just go ahead and jump into it.
Go.
And like I said earlier, we're going to try to get through some of these earlier ones a little faster than we did last time, mainly because we really want to save most of that time for kind of the big finale at the end where we actually are doing kind of a more full-on.
Okay, I'll keep you honest on time.
Attack.
Too. Yeah,
good, because I can't see a lot of time on my screens here.
I remember when I used to do what you're doing for me, and thank you so much, big guy. I mean, I would lose total track of time. So
well, there is a big clock right behind you.
I know, but you're so you focus on getting.
You just smack me in the head when it's time to move on.
I'll hit you.
I'm going down a rabbit hole or whatever. All right, so. Just like last time, basically one of the easiest ways, we mentioned it just a few minutes ago, one of the easiest ways to bypass traditional security is by simply changing the hash value of the file.
Yep.
Right? Last time we showed using a hex editor to change one character in the file to cause it to be rescanned again by the multi-engine scanning site. We're going to use off-the-shelf, packers and mutators, and then obviously, one of the newer methods of hiding your malicious payloads is encrypting that inside of a good file.
Right.
So, what we're going to do today is pretty darn easy. We're just going to run through a lot of those similar types of things quickly, and then we're going to, drag and drop them, throw them onto a Cylance box, and see what Cylance thinks of them.
Roll.
All right. All righty. So. This is our familiar worker box that we use throughout all of our demonstrations here. And I've already got some stuff pre-set up, again, just to make things a little bit quicker. But one of the easiest things we're going to do is we're basically going to go grab our copy of Server that we used exactly last time. So this is our Server 2 that we had from the webinar that we did at the end of June. And
you can see Protect is running on this system.
Protect is running on this system to keep me safe from myself.
I love that.
So it's not doing background scanning of the system.
Just on execution.
Just on execution.
Yeah, I do the same thing because I keep a ton of malware and attacks on my box to do demos on. And I don't want Cylance to pick up on those on disk alone,
right?
Or on writing to disk.
Just if I accidentally double click on it,
I'm an idiot and I double click on something I don't want to, and that's happened actually a couple times.
Oh, it happens to me all the time.
Thank you, Lordy.
I got two safety measures here on this system. One, Protect, keeps me from executing stupid files.
Right.
And the second one is the VM is non-persistent. So if I do screw it up, I log out, it throws it away.
I don't. I walk on the high wire without a net, so I don't do anything in VMs anymore because I believe and trust in Cylance so much. I do. It's probably something, but that's what I do.
All right. So basically, what we've done here in the background is we've copied that file, the Server 2, over to a multi-scanning engine site. And you can see pretty darn high detections.
Right, 23 out of 34 engines in OffSWAT say it's bad.
And as expected, because this file is a year old or whatever, I'm surprised it's not a little higher, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
So the next thing we're going to do is just, again, simply modify it just like we did last time.
Yeah, and of course, you guys can do all of these steps all by yourself.
Well, that was
downloading an Impress.
Yeah, that's what we did last time. So, you know, I invite you guys, if you did test this stuff in your own labs over the past few weeks, like we invited you to do, comment in the Q&A about, you know, what did you guys see with your tools, things like that, and you know, Stu will bring some of those up or whatever. But that was the idea, is give you guys the education and the tools to go kind of do some of these things yourself.
That is man, if that happens from these webinars, that's super exciting, right? Getting people to just feel comfortable doing their own testing for themselves. Okay, now he ran it again. This new version, the Impressed version, and now you can see 9 out of 34. Right.
So even just, 23. And the interesting thing is that Impress basically produces the same hash every time you use it. So it's why it found a previous result. This is exactly the same hash of the file that we used 3 weeks ago. Because Impress uses the same mechanism. So it's essentially going to be the same detection rate.
Actually, that's a great example of how the whole industry works.
Well, let's see if we get better or worse if we tell it to rescan this week.
It'll probably get a little better.
They probably get a little bit better because maybe somebody put this in the wild, right?
Oh, darn it. Okay.
Nope, same result.
So, well, that just highlights how bad the industry is.
What we can do is we can do this. We can go to the original and say analyze again. Because on one of these, we did actually have a drop in detections when we did this 3 weeks ago. Nope, same. Okay. Anyway,
that is the core problem of the industry, is that so many samples get created and generated, and so few folks, companies, you know, AVs, etc., are. Sorry, we're on a webinar. Okay, no problem. We should probably put a sign on the door.
Maybe.
So many people try to just detect the brand new stuff and then write signatures for it, or whatnot. But as you can see, they didn't for this particular sample. So, all right. So what are you doing now?
So the other sample that we're going to build is basically using the granddaddy of all ransomware as a service. We used Atom last time to build a ransomware payloader that's going to charge somebody 0.2 Bitcoin for their ransom, and we're going to target only at PDF files.
Oh, I haven't seen this one.
Oh, this is
payload?
Cool. Yes. So just
hold it out of me, buddy.
Just for your history,
okay.
It's also known as Shark.
Shark.
Palo Alto did a great write-up on it a few years ago. This is from 2015 or 2014. It's like very first.
Yeah.
So the first ransomware as a service was offered as an exe downloader that you downloaded and could build your own payloads.
Oh, I've only seen the ransomware as a service sort of websites.
Right. So early on, the websites weren't full service like SaaS services. They were download this tool, then you can go build your own ransom.
Okay.
Now, it's the command and control for this has been down for years. So a lot of the interaction once it executes and things like that don't really work. Like, for example, it used to
create the payload.
Yes, it used to add a random amount to your Bitcoin asking price so that you couldn't be tracked through Bitcoin transactions.
Sure.
You know, things like that.
All
but basically, again, the same idea here. We have the same concept. We're going to take, you know, the original Atom sample and throw it up on to MetaDefender. Now, the cool thing is, even though this is a known program, every single build that it builds is absolutely unique. So it's a brand new hash.
Some garbage strings.
I don't know what it does, but it causes this site to have to rescan it every time again because the hash doesn't match the one we did 3 weeks ago. So every build is actually unique, which means, you know, if you're using classic antivirus, you know, you're going to force it to rescan it or re-execute it in a sandbox or redo whatever, which, as you can see here, we did.
All right.
Now, with this one, instead of Impress, what we're going to do is we're going to use Aegis Cryptor to actually crypt the malware into a kind of a part of a known good program, where we're going to use basically, you know, their stuff that they have here. Now, the interesting thing is also, so we're going to select our original example. Just like last time, we're not going to use, you know, the demo stub that we built here to do our demos with. We're going to use the freeware stub that is built by Aegis Cryptor. Now, this tool is now, the command and control for this is offline now. It's been taken down for about a year. But these free stubs, so if you build a signature to detect the stubs,
I know.
For, you know, a little over 2 years. This first stub was released in according to their date code there in the file name, it was May of 2016.
And that's what a lot of vendors will do, is they'll take those stubs, sort of the basis of the crypto and obfuscation, and they'll just detect for the core of those stubs.
Yep.
And so again, you're just chasing your tail.
Well, in fact, we did this exact test. Not last time, but I've done this exact test. We took a sample of Atom, encrypted it with the free stub, and we took a sample of Wannacry, encrypted it with the same free stub, and guess what? The multi-engine scanning site detected the exact same signatures on both.
Yeah.
So you know what they're looking for.
Yeah.
So the other thing we're going to do here is we're going to change its icon to look like something that might be a little bit more social engineering
friendly
appetizing.
to click
right.
on, yes.
If any of you out there still use Internet Explorer, that's the idea.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to let Cryptor do its work. And on the desktop, out should pop our new sample. So we had 20 of 34. Let's pop it up over here, and we're just going to drag and drop and see. You know, the idea is maybe not necessarily fully undetectable, but significantly better than what it was before. Again, using absolutely free tools that are easy to use, easy to get. There's no, you didn't see me write any software. I didn't have to compile anything. I didn't have to.
So if it's 8 out of 34, who are the 8 that are seeing it right now? Just for giggles.
Well, I mean, one thing you'll see is the different people who OEM this engine, for example, because they'll have exactly the same detections across multiple engines.
Yeah, that's
so if you look at the
that's the telltale sign of a bit defender right there. See that Trojan dropper agent DOE?
Yep. But if you look here, the unique ones. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right. Actually, 5 unique hits. Others have signatures, and then of course, you know, the list of
is it my alma mater's in there?
Yeah, your alma mater's here. Our alma mater, I guess.
That's true. Semantix not in there. It's interesting. I guess they don't have that one yet. Okay. And anyway, you get the gist.
Yep.
So now what do we do?
Well, so now what we do is, now what we did last time especially is a lot of times when you crypt and mutate, you screw up the original malware.
Yes.
Because it's not the highest quality code sometimes. So we're just going to do a real quick QA session, essentially. We'll flip over to a victim. Now here's a similar victim we had before. We've got some PDF files that are sitting out here on the desktop. I like this one because this is the one I filed with the IRS. They love it when you send in blank files. And we're always in sales, so we've got our sales contracts handy, but we're also in sales, so we always have our resume handy as well.
Right.
All right. And then we got some other stuff like pictures of, my driveway in the middle of winter kind of thing. So
just the time check, we got about 25 or 20 minutes.
We're moving.
Okay.
All right. So, just come over here. Let's grab our encrypted version of Atom. Remember, we told Atom to take out PDFs only, right?
And this is an unprotected system.
This is an unprotected system, right?
So no silence or anything.
Yep. So what we're going to see here pretty quickly is, our PDFs changed, but nothing else changed. This is a very surgical strike tool.
Yeah, just went after the PDFs.
Just went after the PDFs. Okay. And then so even,
it works.
Even if we come back and we change the name, files corrupted, right? Okay. That's our expectation. We're going to go ahead and not destroy this, or we're going to destroy this system, but we're not going to destroy the other victim we have. We're going to grab our Impress version of Cerber, and Cerber obviously does all kinds of fun stuff, but we're going to hopefully see here within a few seconds of running it that it's going to jump in and, there you go. So we know we've got a good copy of Cerber as well.
Okay.
So we're now done with that thing. We're going to
QA.
throw that thing away and let it reset.
I would torch that one.
Yeah, it's torched. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to pop over to our Cylance box. This has got Cylance, Protect, and Optics installed, latest and greatest products.
Yep.
We're good to go. And again, we're just going to do basically the same kind of thing. We're just going to go over, we're going to grab our, let's grab all of the malware that we created essentially.
Okay.
drag it and drop it over to the desktop.
Okay.
And same kind of thing here, right? Just double click. Oh yeah, we're prevented from executing.
Yeah, and you can see one of them got cleaned
And
up
you
right
see Adam
Yeah,
got
so
the original Adam exe got cleaned up right away.
Okay.
You know, just to show, you know,
There it
copy
is.
over detection. So
all right.
pre-execution blocking.
So the first demo worked.
First
Okay,
demo
great.
works.
So all three of those got caught.
Yep.
CylancePROTECT. Again, no signatures, all machine learning based. Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
Awesome. So let's go ahead and have some fun now. So what we've got, and like I said, I've set up these a little bit earlier so that we can accelerate through them relatively quickly.
Yep.
The second demo that we went through, we're going to look at a couple of different mechanisms to inject shellcode into memory. And so these would be considered either truly fileless, or maybe they're born by a file, but the file is not malicious.
Yeah.
Right. So,
So much more of
compiled Python code.
You know what I've noticed is so much more of the discussion on fileless is really just script-based attacks. That's what I've noticed.
Yes. And then where does the script come from?
It's like
It comes from a file.
Right,
It comes from a document. It comes from.
Yeah, and exploitation attacks, which is really what you're talking about here, is in-memory exploitation based on just a normal running process.
Yep.
I mean, that's been around forever and ever,
Yep.
ever and ever. And of course, Cylance has had prevention on that, on those techniques ever since we started the company. So,
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Cool.
So what we're going to do is we're going to do our real quick. We're going to build our payload.
Yeah.
I've already got Metasploit down here in the bottom right-hand listening. It's ready to go.
Okay.
And we're going to use a Python payload with a reverse TCP interpreter, just like we have listening over here on the bottom
And this is
right-hand
just
corner.
your standard Kali build.
Standard Kali build right out of the box. So if you're going to use Kali for, you know, red
Yeah.
team offensive testing, it's
Right.
got a lot of the tools that you need to do that with.
Yep. So veil evasion's on that.
Yep. So we're going to
Distro.
use veil evasion as our payload builder here.
Yep.
All right. So we're going to generate it. What do you want to call it?
Bad stew.
Stu's Great App or something, you know. I think last time we used Awesome or something like that. Awesome app. I've got best app ever. You know, anything we can use to try to get somebody to execute the code.
Yeah. Okay.
Awesome. Okay, so we now have our payload built, and so what we're going to do right now is we're going to copy this bad boy up over to our little server. So there's our exe. It's built in our Kali box, and we're just going to FTP it over to where we can get at it from the victim systems in the Cylance system.
Yep. Sure. File share.
So bear with me while I fat finger my password a few dozen times. All right, I got it. All right, so we're going to just, let's just do, we're gonna just put that app up there. Delete them, get that back to the box. Okay, so, you know, we ran it last time, so I don't think we need to run it on a victim this time. I think we're just gonna go ahead and see what happens.
You saw it work before.
We saw it work before we attacked the system. We
Just
did a key logging and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. So we're just gonna see basically what we have over here on the Cylance side. So it's placed in Dropbox. There's the Stu app. And if we drag and drop it to the desktop, one of the things you'll see here in a few moments across the bottom is that Cylance saw it being added to the system. So it's going to inspect it.
Yeah, because we have File Watcher turned on.
Right, File Watcher's turned on. So it went away. We didn't see any threats, speed detector, or anything else. So this is a safe file.
Safe file by machine learning, right?
By machine learning,
Okay.
by determined, yes,
Okay.
yes. And so now we have a safe file that is not going to be stopped from being executed pre-execution.
Right.
However, we know that it's going to do something in memory,
Yes.
and that's when essentially this is going to stop. So
Attempt to do
a couple of things we're going to look for here. We're going to look for a connection that's going to attempt to be made to this listener that's over here, right? Our Metasploit listener.
So if it works,
you'll
see traffic coming back to the Metasploit listener.
Now the interesting thing is there's been some changes in how veil evasion works over the past few months. It used to execute the payload without making sure that there was a listener listening. So now it actually beacons back, making sure that
before it runs the rest of it.
before it executes the actual malicious code.
That's a major change.
It's a major change, and it's kind of interesting. So what we should expect to see here is actually a connection back to Metasploit,
Right.
but then it immediately die when we
Okay.
execute.
Well, I'm crossing fingers. There we go. Okay. Yeah,
All right. So we get a process terminate.
Yep.
And what this is basically is it's a memory defense mechanism that we have built into Protect. I've had it since pretty much day zero. And basically, it's detecting a malicious payload in memory, and then it terminates the offending process.
Yep.
So if we bounce back to Metasploit, we do see that, yes, we got a beacon back, but that's only now a checksum to make sure that there's no reason to run the malicious code if you can't talk to the hive mind, right?
It's just a ping that basically opened the session, and then it closed.
And then it, boom, it just dead. Dead in the water.
Awesome. Yay.
Okay, so basically what we've seen there is we now see, Metasploit.
Veil's payload being blocked.
Veil's payload being
on CylancePROTECT.
Blocked by memory defense. Yes, anti-exploitation module.
Awesome.
All right.
And that's still within an exe.
It's still
otherwise looks safe to the map.
It's still file based, kind of, but it's just a Python script that's running inside of an exe. So it's partially fileless, but partially a file as well. It started from a file. But again, any one of these attacks, the goal is to execute some code on the end machine anyway, whether it's only in memory or whether it's an exe on disk, or we go back if you have exposed replacing DLLs.
Right.
The goal is to execute code to gain remote control. That's the main goal. And I've even got, here are the files that we made, last time. I've got those hanging around too. We can take a look at those maybe at the end. Okay, awesome. So
what's next?
What's next is Shelter. So again, it's a very similar mechanism to this. And what we're going to do with Shelter is we're going to take this Autorun exe that I downloaded from Microsoft. This is, it's a valid tool. It's good stuff. And what we're going to do is we're just going to bail out of MSF for a second. Okay. Again, what this is going to try to do is inject code into memory with a different mechanism. And Evil Bob's going to come on here in a minute and talk to us a little bit about what this is actually doing in the background. So I'm going to start that process first. And so we're going to bring up Shelter. Shelter is a very simple Windows tool, sort of. You can run it in Wine and things like that. But we're just going to use an automated operation mode. We're not going to perform an update. And what PE do you want it to target? So we're going to drop our PE on there to give our path.
And is that the legit Autoruns tool?
It is the legit Autoruns tool, yep. And so, Evil Bob, would you go ahead and explain a little bit about what is happening here in the background while I get Metasploit set up?
So you can see at the top that of that Shelter window that it says the number of instructions, and you can see those number of instructions going up. So what Shelter does is basically it allows that executable to run inside a Shelter and in like a debug mode, and it has a look at what instructions are being passed around. And where Shelter is really cool compared to something like Veil, Veil's very cool as well, but where Shelter is really cool is it doesn't add any code to the executable, doesn't put it in code caves, doesn't add any resource files or anything like that. It looks at what the execution flow of that exe is, and it modifies the original entry point. And when you modify the original entry point, you can get it to bounce around, putting in the opcodes and the data that you need to write that shellcode into memory. And the real cool thing about it is where Brian's up to at the moment on the other screen, it says enable stealth mode. And if you say yes to enable stealth mode, what it'll then do is once it's finished writing the shellcode into memory, it'll then jump back to the original entry point, and it'll allow the executable to run as it would run normally. So the user double clicks it. It's not like it's a dead exe. They're expecting auto runs to pop up and it doesn't. It does, and it runs as auto runs would, but you have that foothold. It is so cool. It's one of my favorite tools.
That is cool. Awesome. Yeah, it's sort of like the bank robber getting in from the inside, putting freezing the video camera frame, to nobody coming up and robbing the place, and then turning it off and allowing the cameras to go normally.
Yep.
So
it is. It's like the closer. It's like, I don't see it as like creating like malware as such. It's like a crossover between exploiting an application that you have control of that application.
Right.
You're writing an exploit into it. It's like this hybrid in the middle. It's just so cool. I love it.
Yeah, and so this one has found a proper injection point to inject the malicious payload, which in this case was a reverse HTTPS.
Okay.
Right.
Love that.
So again, what we're going to be looking for down here in the Metasploit console is a beacon back and delivery of a payload. So we now have a modified Autorun's exe. You can see here date and time is modified pretty much right now.
Today, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we're going to, where is my brain? There we go. We're going to copy that file over to our network share. And again, instead of running it on a victim and getting remote control and doing screenshot, we're gonna go ahead
trust
and move
that it
forward.
works. Yeah.
So we can get to the next one. And we're gonna come up in here. We're gonna grab our Autorun's exe. Now, again, Cylance is going to examine this very quickly. And it's gonna most likely say that it's okay because according to the math, it looks like Autoruns and it has the features of Autoruns, everything else. However, when we execute it, immediately we get the process terminated warning. And again, we have another malicious payload detection, in-memory exploitation attack.
Hey, we had a question. Evil Bob answered the question, I guess. Yeah.
Okay.
So, but I just want to verbalize it real quick. So many companies won't allow outbound connections to port 4444 or whatever you set up here, 4545.
Yeah, these are all
Would
internal.
this still be detected if the listener was on port 80?
Absolutely.
Of course it would, right? Yeah.
Yeah. The ports we're using here because it's all internally within this little network.
But we can do
right
80
here.
or 443 or 8080 or whatever port.
Yeah. In fact, our attack next we're going to use on port 8080, which is going to be kind of fun. But that's only because we already have a web server listening on the Kali box, those kind of things.
No, but that's a good point. To make it more real world, when we do these again, let's use the real world ports to just make sure that we show everybody. Okay.
Absolutely.
So thanks for that.
Okay. Now, one thing notice different here is we had the Metasploit, reversed HTTPS listener going. The way Shelter worked, we never did see a beacon back even. Right. So again, it's depending on how the tool works, whether it goes to make sure that even that listener is there before it executes the malicious code, right? Why tip your hat if your listener isn't listening to catch the shell anyway? So this one still uses kind of.
So another question that came across, can you get more information on why Cylance decided files are malicious from the protect screen?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when you get, and we can look at that here in a minute when we flash over and get into the console, but when you have a threat that's been detected, you get a detection report. Yeah. And it breaks down what did it see? Did it see that that file has the ability to delete other files? Did it see, possibly, weird.
So we'll show them that
registry thing. Yeah, you can get, and it's only for you. So in your tenant, in your console, you get these, malware reports essentially.
Right, so we'll show you that in the console in a little bit.
Yep. Okay. All right. So we're going to get set up for our next phase. And with this one, we'll get those tools set up here in a second. What we're going to do, we're going to kind of combine all of these things together, all of the learnings that we've had in the past kind of together. So we're going to go and we're going to grab a copy of Wannacry. We're going to use Wannacry 3 today. And we are, I killed it, but we should be able to get back to it.
By the way, while you're doing that, I forgot to mention in the beginning of the webinar that these Hacking Exposed webinars can be used for CPE credits. They've always been allowed for CPE if you are a CISP and you want to continue getting that certification. Don't forget to just mention the date and time, et cetera, when you submit, and you should be good to go on that one.
Yep. So, and we'll have more information on that in the future, as well as a reminder in the slide deck for everybody as well.
Exactly.
Yep. All right, so we're just gonna use AegisCryptor just like we did, last time on the Atom sample. And so we're going to save our sample of Wannacry. Now, Wannacry has been out over a year now as well. So, you know, long-term malware, you know, yeah, good detection on tools like this. And so we're just going to do a real quick test of a
And how long before Wannacry hit did we detect on Wannacry?
I believe the number, well, let's
Like
see.
21 months.
It's almost 2 years.
Almost 2 years ahead of Wannacry.
Yeah. So basically, we used an engine from 2 years prior.
Yeah.
That was never updated.
So when we talk about being able to be ahead of the bad guys, finally getting ahead of the bad guys, that's what this allows us to do, is to finally get ahead of the bad guys and prevent attacks that we're not going to see for years
here
to come.
You can see pretty much the same detections. That nobody sees it as Wannacry; they see it as the stub.
Yep.
Right. So again, you know, we're not necessarily fooling the signature; they're still picking it up.
It's sort of like saying, well, we caught the burglar. He was dressed in all black and he was holding a crowbar as he walked up to your house.
Right.
Right. You're sort of like, whoa, that's actually my uncle.
But we also caught your uncle walking up in a black hoodie with a crowbar, right?
It's not catching the actual malicious person. Anyway.
Right. It's not catching the maliciousness. It's just catching how the file was built.
Yeah.
So that's a big key distinction. Okay, so basically what we've done here is we've built our sample where our goal is to deploy that out to our victim machine and then to our Cylance machine.
Sure.
And so now what we're going to do is we're going to set up our tools on the back end. And like I said before, we're going to run this one over 8080, but again, we could run it over any port we want. I'm going to stop the default Apache server because I'm going to fire up kind of my own little server that's going to host our fake website.
Okay.
So we're going to get into this one. And this one, we've added an additional element that we did not have last time, and I think you guys are going to like this.
Okay.
We've added the initial weaponization vector to this one.
The initial, okay.
So the initial attack vector, I'll show you here in a moment. It'll be kind of interesting. So before we just kind of executed the file by hand or went to the website manually, we've now added a phishing attack to get you to click on the website.
Perfect.
So, all right, so we're going to start our little web server. And we're going to put this one on 8080.
It's a little Python version of a...
Yep, just a little quick web server. There's a landing page in there with some HTML files that we're going to... Basically what this is doing, and this could be literally anything. I mean, you could go to a hotel with a Wi-Fi router, fire up an SSID, the same name as the hotel, and use this as, let's say, every hotel has a login here to gain access to the deal. Now, Trevor's interesting because what you can do is point it to that authentication site, and it will actually suck the whole site down and stand it up on its own.
In the old days, man, we'd have to do that all manually.
Oh yeah, it was all manual.
Hacking up those access points. All right, just for time check, you got about 5 minutes? Piece of cake, right?
Yeah. Okay. All right, so what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and run the Trevor server. Okay, if I can type. All right, and what this is going to do, basically what you saw is it went and grabbed the site and essentially emulated it. So it's copied it, it's cloned the website. Again, this could be any public site. It could be anything else, whatever you wanted. And it's basically ready to listen for a connection. An inbound connection. All right. So we've got our victim. And in our victim, wow, you're sending me a lot of really cool emails, Stu. All right, so in our victim, what I have here is I've got something that we all commonly see on a daily basis. We have an email from your bank, and they've had a potential security issue in the online banking system. They need you to get in and change your password right now. Mandatory change, otherwise we're going to shut you off. And if you're like me, you live and die by your online banking because I don't have time to deal with paper bills in the mail. So, again, it's legitimate looking email. Obviously, if your bank has a cheesy piggy bank icon, I would probably look for something different. But
hurry up, click on the link, man.
Okay.
We want to make sure we get it.
So basically, this site is designed such to say that basically, okay, you can change your password, but before you do that, we've scanned your system and you need a patch.
Oh, right. Well, they're just being good citizens.
They're helping me
to
out.
make sure that you're secure and safe.
That's
okay?
right.
So you need to click on the security update.
Yep.
Okay. Which
And now the funny thing is that we as human beings have been conditioned to just click next, next, next.
Sure.
Ignoring warnings, ignoring whatever else, so that we can
this
get
is the bank.
into our bank.
This is the bank.
It's my bank, right?
So this is a batch file.
Yep. So we're going to start this one from a bat file. Again, here's another warning, but again, it's my bank. Why would I suspect that anything bad would be happening? Well, okay, nothing's happened.
Yeah, just a quick flash of
a quick
command
flash
prompt, and that was it. Okay.
Except we now have a session returned, right?
Okay.
All right, so we can see that session from our victim. Trevor C2 established.
Nice.
All right, now let's go do that same technique over here. So again, we've got our security email.
Okay.
Stu needs to get in and change his password really bad because he's going to get logged out.
Yep.
Warning. Execute. Whoa.
Boom. Okay.
CylanceOPTICS detection.
Mm-hmm.
Security issue prevented. Customizable message to give your users an easy, phone number to call your
I've called
security
that number
center.
before. No
Have you?
answers.
I have as well. So we actually have multiple detections here. We actually have 3.
Okay.
Now, the interesting thing is we'll look back over here. We don't see a new connection.
Right.
So that's interesting. Optics, which is kind of in the EDR category, how come it's still prevented? Right? And that's actually what we told it to do, because we are building prevention first technology.
Mm-hmm.
We told Optics, if it sees something like PowerShell download, we told it by the rules to kill that sucker and stop it from happening.
Got it.
Right? Mm-hmm. So basically what we have is we have our bat shell attempted to execute with our update bat, right?
Yep.
That in turn then launched a PowerShell code, right?
There's your command line. Right?
That's your most common PowerShell one-liner that everybody calls a fileless attack.
Yeah, there's your fileless attack.
But guess what? It's trying to go get another file, right? But whatever.
Yeah.
But you also see here that Optics did its job and prevented, responded not by alerting the humans to go do something, your house is on fire, but it kept the fire from starting.
Yep, exactly.
Okay. That's
awesome.
kind of fun. So now what we're going to do is we're actually going to go modify the rules really quick. So we're now going to we're going to tell Optics, instead of terminating the process, we're just going to have it show us a notification. So this is more of a traditional detect and respond, right? You're going to tell us that your house is on fire, but it's going to still let the house burn. That's the theory, right?
Yep.
So we're going to put it in detection mode. We're not going to terminate. We're going to still show the notification process, but we're not going to do anything about it.
And this is using the ML one-liner.
Yes, we had multiple hits on the first side there as well. We'll go back to that here in a second while the policy gets updated. So if we come back and we look, the first thing we saw was we actually had 3 different rules in Optics that hit.
Right.
We have our brand new machine learning one-liner that picks up and detects behavior.
Yeah, exactly. And before, we had a question that's relevant on the PowerShell download. He said, is Don, wouldn't this also kill legitimate program updates? So generally the answer is no, especially because of the way that PowerShell download is done in terms of the one-liner nature of it, the format of it. You wouldn't be downloading PowerShell like that. You would just be running PowerShell locally. And usually it'd be, hopefully, with a signed script or some sort of approved.
A great example is Microsoft Exchange updates. Exchange updates are huge now, big PowerShell scripts that run in the background.
That's right. Exactly.
And they're signed by Microsoft. So it's only when you bypass the execution policies and remote signed or no signing required. It's all the behavior of all of that to try to
where it's run,
yes.
right? It's the context in which it runs, all that kind of stuff.
Yep. Okay, so now we have, we've basically turned off optics protection model, and we're using it as essentially as an EDR, okay? So now in this case, what we're gonna do is we're going to see on the web server, we should see something else happen, right? We should see that when we execute the security update, we should also now see, we get the PowerShell script and it's gonna try to execute. So we're gonna do that. We're just going to refresh our page, apply the security update again. Again, we have a warning. We're gonna be your normal user. And now this time what we see is, again, we get our customized message because we have 3 of those that pop up that saw 3 different hits. But we also saw something else new this time. We saw CylancePROTECT step in and stop and block the PowerShell script itself. So if we pop over to our console, we are going to have our detections, right? We still have our 3 detections, but this time we told optics not to automatically respond. So there's no automated kill here.
Sure.
We let it execute. We have evidence of where it came from, how it was executed, what the command was, etc. And if we come back over to our system here, we will basically see, again, the bat file was downloaded and executed. But again, we don't have a new session here in our list of sessions that are attached to Trevor. Okay.
And the detection for this one was the PowerShell download again?
So what this one is, again, is the detections are PowerShell download. You got a fileless PowerShell malware behavior, and again, the machine learning one-liner hits on this one as well. All right, so we're gonna clear, actually before I clear, what we're gonna do now is we're gonna take away another feature from Cylance to see if we can get the attack to happen. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go into the host. Now, inside the host here, you're gonna be able to see script control. Again, evidence of the command being stopped. Script control did its job. So let's go ahead and disable script control next. Okay, so if we disable script control, now here, by the way, when we look here you can see here the threat that we detected earlier. This was actually run earlier this morning as a dry run.
We were going to show sort of what data we can see, etc.
Right, from the threat. I'm not sure why
You had it there.
Don't know. Maybe we had an internet burp there all of a sudden. I'm not sure. Let's just go ahead and, so we're going to delete these detections again, just to kind of keep this clear and clean.
Okay.
So we've disabled script control.
Right.
Okay. So now
we're going to rely just on optics.
We've got EDR in place to observe, but not prevent. We've now are going to disable script control. So Protect is now going to let that PowerShell file execute.
Right.
So now we've basically disabled all the features that step out in front of this attack. So what we should see, and we're just going to verify that, make sure we get our proper policy. Did I not save the policy?
You did.
Demo script off, but why are we not getting the policy?
Do another policy update.
Yeah, well, demo gods,
We've had a little Wi-Fi issues here in this room.
Yeah, well, the attack is not going to happen if I can't get the policy to update.
That's all right. We're sort of running out of time anyway because we want to do a little bit of Q&A. We had one more question here on Defender anti-malware updates is another example. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of updates that use PowerShell. So what you would make sure that whatever the techniques are that the vendor is using would either be, more traditional PowerShell runs versus sort of the hacking versions that wouldn't be triggered by this stuff. But also you could just use the machine learning one-liners. A lot of that stuff will catch obfuscated scripts, a lot of the really super malicious ones. And so most folks do not have any problem implementing that at all. So
Stu, we've been getting some questions in the chat as well. So not
okay.
just
Yeah,
in
I
the
have been
Q&A,
monitoring
so.
chat because it's a little challenging to.
Yeah, I've been trying to answer those as we've been going along. So
Yeah.
just
Okay.
yeah.
I don't know why.
All right. All right. Well, so with that, any other demos at this point? Or are we
Well,
good?
I mean, basically the next step was for us to go through and do it again. But if I'm not able to turn off script
Yeah, don't worry
control for
about
some reason, we're still blocking. I don't know why our agent's not able to talk.
Right.
to
What
us.
Brian is trying to do is just allow more and more and more to pass, so we can sort of
Yeah.
show each and every single layer. But I think the audience gets the point.
Yep.
There are multiple layers that would catch all this
Yeah.
stuff.
So basically, what was going to happen is we basically let Protect let the attack happen.
Yep.
We don't stop it with optics. We don't stop it with Protect with script control. And then basically, like what you guys saw last time, is what we do is we use certutil to then download a secondary payload, which is then going to, when it executes, it's going to download a copy of the Wannacry that we created with AgeScriptor and execute it. So at that point, you would basically see the Wannacry AC file be stopped. I mean, we can simulate that by just going and grabbing the Wannacry.
Don't worry about it, bro. Don't worry about it. You're good. You're good. Okay, so let's just follow up on any questions that you might have. Someone asked, how does this compare against SonicWall's capture client? I don't know SonicWall's capture client. I don't know what that is.
I'm
Do
not,
you know?
No.
Evil Bob, I don't know if you're familiar. If you are, just pipe in.
Well, the interesting thing is,
I'm
I don't know that product specifically, but if you're trying to say maybe something that's network-based that looks at like the Trevor C2 commands, go back and watch the webinar that we did 3 weeks ago, because we actually used Wireshark to show you that those commands are all encoded in base 64. And unless you know the encoding stream, even when clear text over port 80, you can't decode those strings. So we have good examples. So if you're looking for specific commands to be in those strings, any sort of inline network intrusion or capture tool like that is just not going to capture those.
Yeah, Jason Palms said capture client uses Sentinel-1s. I don't know how they're using it, but I think Evil Bob, you've been doing a pretty good job of going through the chats and answering things like exploit guard. What is a 10 exploit guard? I think they're just talking about what was the old in-memory exploitation prevention tool that they used forever and then they end of life did on Windows? What's it called?
I can't remember the name of it.
You know what I'm talking about though, right? I mean, how many
Yeah,
times?
I know what you're talking about.
It's got to be, that's what he's probably talking about.
It's not the ASLR stuff, right?
ASLR is part of it.
It was part of it.
Yeah,
But they had a name for it.
there was
I don't
literally
remember.
300 different, what's it called? I'm losing my mind. We used to use it all the time. Anyway, not a big deal. Okay. Does it replace the functionality of Windows 10 exploit guard? The short answer is yes, we do replace that in many, many ways. That's memory, what we call memdef or memory protection, things of that nature.
Anti-exploitation
is what exploit guard would replace that functionality.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So
Yep.
we've got a couple of slides left to do.
Yeah, a couple slides
Then we'll
left.
come back to Q&A.
Okay.
Obviously, we can talk about countermeasures here. Yeah, we had the demo gods frown on us for a second there. But, our approach is to, like you said before, prevent first, detect later, right? So you saw optics, which is in an EDR category, doing automatic prevention of the different things happening.
Yeah, that's one of the key differentiators, by
Exactly.
the way, around optics for Cylance is we take a preventative approach to EDR. I don't see really anybody doing that, certainly not in a signatureless way.
Right.
So we have built multiple machine learning models based on behavior and activity that have been malicious. So we can tell you when something is going to be malicious before it actually is, and we can block it in real time. So that's sort of one of the cool differences.
Try to take out those attacks before they become, your house is on fire.
Exactly.
And obviously, detecting and responding is a market. It's got value, but again, it's not scalable without a prevention first strategy. Because if you're preventing only, let's say, a low percentage of the attacks, then that leaves a much higher percentage of attacks for your humans to have to dig through and deal with. But if you can get in there and at first prevent, nearly every single attack.
What we try to do is give you the needles
Right.
versus giving you the haystack to look for the needles. So we just give you pure needles to go kill. All right, we've got
that's
1.5 minutes. We got 90 seconds.
The last thing we wanted to talk about was the introduction of our new consumer product out there for people to use at home, for their families, for their friends.
Yeah, super excited about this. This was just announced a couple weeks ago. You can check us out at shop.cylance.com, but basically we've been able to port that core machine learning conviction engine into a consumer product.
Consumer friendly too.
Yep, very friendly. It has an app for your phone or your mobile system, so you can actually take action and view. And it's getting just huge reviews, and it's been really cool. In fact, I'll tell you my funny story. So like 2 months ago, my daughter, who has a MacBook, comes to me and says, Dad, my computer is running so slow. I need a new computer. I need a new MacBook. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. I just bought this thing like 12 months ago. Give me a look at it. And of course, I had not installed Cylance on it yet. So I downloaded the consumer version, ran it. It found 5 viruses on her Mac. 2 were traditional malware, 2 were adverse spyware, and 1 was sort of a pup. But once it cleaned all 5 of those, that system went right back to like brand new speed and performance. And she was so bummed out. I was sort of dancing in the corner with that one. All right, quick question here. What's the pricing model for Cylance? It is price per node. On the consumer edition, you can take a look at the pricing models up on shop.cylance.com. But pricing model depends on how many nodes that you are wanting to install it on. All right, we're catching up at the end. There's a couple of surveys. Please go ahead and answer these surveys. We can't vote, but the questions are, obviously, did you find it useful? You want to speak with anyone? Also, we had 2 more out there,
we had 2 more, but I screwed up.
Did we not get it done?
Over to Liz in time, so
okay,
that's my fault. Sorry about that.
So the question, I think one of them was, would a consumer version be interesting for you guys? Would you want to play with it and take a look at it? And I can't remember the other one. So anyway. Oh, Emmett, thank you. Emmett, yes.
That's
is that evil
right.
Bob? Thank you. God.
Yes, EMET, Emmett.
Yes.
I can't take credit.
That was Sean.
Sean and John.
Yeah. Thanks, Sean.
And John Miller.
John, yes, of course.
Stuff was going insane today, so thank you.
My brain's just failing me fast. Okay.
All right.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Evil Bob. Great work. Thanks, everybody online. Check us out in a few weeks and give us ideas.
Keep an eye on that registration page for the next one. We'll be back live shortly.
Yep. Thanks so much. Bye.
Thank you very much.